So, you're thinking about moving to the Lansing, Michigan area, and you've heard a lot about the weather, namely how cold it can get. Well, in this video, I'm going to explain to you what the weather looks like from January all the way up until December of each and every calendar year. And also, I will share with you some things you might need to know each and every season. But please stick around until the end, because I'm going to share with you what does the probability look like to have a white Christmas in Michigan each and every year. So I invite you to sit back, relax, because we're going to start with this new episode of Lansing, Michigan Life right now. Hey everybody, Troy Seifert here with the Capital Area Real Estate Specialist in the greater Lansing, Michigan area. And we get phone calls all the time from people who are just like you, looking to buy or even sell in the Lansing, Michigan area. And so if that's you, if you're looking to buy here in the next 9 days, 90 days, or even 9 months, whatever time frame that looks like for you, our team would love to be able to speak with you. You can call, you can text, you can email, you can even schedule a Zoom call with me. I would love to be able to talk with you about your future real estate goals. Also, if this is your first time to the channel, or if this is your third or 10th time to the channel and you haven't done so yet, please like, subscribe, or ring the bell for any notifications so that you can be the first to be notified when a new episode of Lansing, Michigan Live comes live on the web. And also, just to let you know, in the comments, if you want to talk about some topics that I haven't spoken about or you have any questions, I will interact with you and feel free to drop a comment there and I will get with you as soon as I possibly can with that as well. Okay, so the weather, it's a hot topic here in Michigan. It is something that people talk about, namely the cold weather. And before I get into that, I do want to talk about the probability that a natural disaster might happen in Michigan, namely Lansing, Michigan. So the good news for you is that as far as a hurricane goes, we're not a coastal state. You're not going to have to deal with hurricanes. Earthquakes, more sporadic. I mean, we're not in California where they can be more, they can be something that happens more often. So, I mean, that's a good thing as well. So you might be watching this, you might be coming from California or some of those states where you've had a lot of earthquakes. You don't really have to deal with that in Michigan. The one thing that's just kind of a wild card each and every year, you just don't know what's going to happen, are tornadoes. Probability wise, we don't have a heck of a whole lot of tornadoes in our area, but recently, within the last, I would say it was 2 years ago, we had a huge tornado go through Williamston, Michigan, which is on the east side of Lansing. There was just a huge tornado that went across the highway. It also hit the west side of Lansing over in Grand Ledge area. It just went clear across the highway. And there was so much damage that was done. One of my clients completely lost their house in Williamston and they had to rebuild. It was a devastating thing. So if there is going to be a natural disaster that happens, the one that might tend to happen the most would be, unfortunately, a tornado, because we have had one of those within the last couple of years. But other than that, as far as hurricanes and earthquakes, we are kind of safe from some of those things. All right, so what I said I was going to do in the beginning of the video is I said that I was going to go according to calendar year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 3 months at a time. I'm going to tell you what the average temperatures are. I'm going to talk about some of the highs and lows of what you can anticipate within the last 5 years. So a lot of this information for temperatures is going to be within the last 5 years. I'm going to be talking about some precipitation during those months, whether it's snow or it is rainfall. And then, like I said earlier as well, I am going to give you a tip of some random things that happen each and every year throughout the season that you might want to be aware of when you move here. So I'm going to start with January, February, March in Michigan. And January, February, March, that makes up the brunt of, you guessed it, winter season. And people either love it or they hate it. And for January, February, March, that's when people need to start taking their vitamin D because the sun doesn't come out as much. That's a time that people who suffer with arthritis or might just have some diseases that are affected by the cold, that's when those are going to become more prominent, right? So January, February, and March, the one thing that I will say that's good about being in Lansing during these months is that with us being right here in the center, which is this Michigan right here, being in the center of the state, it is such a blessing to be there because surrounding Michigan are all the Great Lakes. If you go to the west, you got Grand Rapids over here, and they have Lake Michigan. And you go to the north, you have Superior, Huron, you have all those lakes that are over there. And the one thing that I will tell you is that with those lakes is that you will have a ton of lake effect snow if you're further up north or if you're further to the west. But being in the center, I'm not saying we're completely immune from it, but the amount of lake effect snow we're going to get in the center of the state is greatly diminished. So that is definitely a positive in our area. So some of these things I'm gonna quote to you about snowfall, depending on where you live, like if you're living in a warmer state, you're gonna be like, well, that sounds like a lot of snow. Well, comparing it to other parts of the state, that's actually a lot less. So January, February, and March, that's just something for you to be aware of, that we're in the middle of Michigan, which makes us a little bit more immune from all the lake effect that happens. So in January, February, and March, the average temperatures in the last 5 years, starting in 2020, we had 28-degree average in January, another 28-degree average in February, and a close to 39-degree average in March. Now, the thing I will tell you about last year's winter, it was so mild. It's in the 17, 18 years I've been living in Michigan, it was the mildest winter I've ever experienced. And so I don't know if that's a trend of things to come, because I will say in the last 5 years, I have noticed that the snowfall hasn't been so crazy. But as far as like the temperatures go, the lowest temperatures that we saw in 2020, we had like -1. And that would be like during these months that we would have had in January, February, March. In 2021, we had -9. Sometimes there's a polar vortex that comes from Canada, from the north, and just creates brutal wind chills. Okay, we do get those from time to time. And then 2022, -3 degrees, 2023, 0 degrees was our low. And then in 2024, we did have a -4 degree day. So you are gonna have some of those days, but it's not the norm. You heard the average, right? There are more days that it seems like might be closer to above freezing than below like 0 and having horrible wind chills, okay? So you are gonna have some of those days in January, February, March, but it's not gonna be as bad as what you think. I think people think the worst and they're like, this is how my winter's gonna be all winter. And in Lansing, we are very fortunate to where we're not gonna have snow all the time, and we're not gonna have such cold temperatures all of the time. Now, the thing I will tell you is that in February, especially, what I've noticed year to year, and this isn't something that's official, it's just something that I have noticed, is that in February, we typically have what's known as a Michigan thaw, where we have a day where it's like 50 degrees and we have a ton of snow on the ground. Maybe that's been built up because we haven't been able to get to below freezing temperatures. And then all of a sudden we have this thaw day, and it's like for 2 or 3 days, and all the snow goes away and all you see is brown grass everywhere. For some reason, it happens every single year in the month of February. Now, if it doesn't happen in the month of February for the upcoming years, I apologize, but that's something that I have noticed. I've heard other people say that too. We call it the February thaw, the Michigan winter thaw, each and every year. So February, there is gonna be a couple day stretch where everything just kind of melts and it looks kind of ugly. And then, hey, in March, we might get some more snow to cover that up. So just something for you to be aware of. Another thing just for you to be aware of as well is it's something that I experienced this last weekend when I was visiting family. So I looked at the map and there was supposed to be a huge snowstorm that was going to happen in Michigan, and a lot of it was going to be lake effect. And sure enough, people who were, and this is over, I want to say it was like Thanksgiving weekend, which I know I'm getting ahead of myself. Thanksgiving's in November, right? But I'm kind of stating this to reiterate the point of us being in the center of the state. So my family were driving through the center in northern Indiana, coming home from Thanksgiving, and it's still in the center of Indiana. We're going north, we're going to the center of the state, and we heard from people when we came back home that they went to Grand Rapids and it was horrible. Like the weather was horrible. We had some friends that went to Bay City, which is in this area right over here, close to a lake. It was horrible there. Up north, tons of inches of snow. In Lansing, we had a dusting. It was not that bad. So again, because of us being in the center of the state, we don't have as much snowfall total. On average, again, this is since 1991, we've had on average 23 inches of snow. In February, we've had on average 17 inches of snow. And then in March, it kind of goes downhill, but 7.6 inches of snow. Now, as I kind of transition out of winter, I believe March 21st or 22nd is when spring begins, right? Well, we still have colder temperatures in Michigan in the month of March. So as we transition into now April, May, and June, I'm gonna get into this next segment here in April, May, and June. We have mostly the spring season, but here's the thing that's interesting, because I want you guys to hear for April, May, and June. What the average temperatures look like. So in April, in the last 5 years, it's an average of about 47 degrees. That still kind of feels a little fall, because you're gonna have some weeks where it's going to be a little cooler, and then you might have, and this is typical in April too, you're gonna have like a 75 or an 80 degree week where it's super hot, and you're like, wow, this is incredible, this is awesome. And it happens for 1 or 2 days, and then the temperature drops again. That is something that is not uncommon to happen, because people say, it's Michigan, right? And so that phrase that they say it's Michigan means that you could experience 3 different seasons in one day. And the months of April, May, and June, these are definitely the months where that phrase, it's Michigan, is definitely true. Because you could have a morning where it's frosty out, it's like 30 degrees out, right? And then you get to noon and it starts to rain, because it is a little bit above freezing. And so you're going, okay, it's a rainy day. And then at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun can start shining and it turns into like a 60-degree day. And those are things that can happen in Michigan, okay? Like you can go through 2 or 3 different seasons in a day. And again, it's very common in April, May, and June. So April, 48 degrees. May, you get into close to 60 degrees. And then in June, the average in the last 5 years has been 70 degrees. So again, very pleasant weather during those months, but there are some days where it could get a little bit chillier. The other thing that I will tell you is usually in mid-May is when you can anticipate the nicer weather. So April, it's a little bit of a toss-up. You don't know if you could have a lot of winter in April or you could have 70-degree day. May, once you get to the middle of May, that's when you can count on the weather at least being like around 60 degrees. So spring, summer can start a little bit later in Michigan, just because just because of whatever's going on with the weather system. That's just typically how it works here, right? Maybe that's a very generic way of explaining it, but it's the best way I can explain it, because again, it's Michigan, it's just tough to explain. The other thing I want to tell you about is in March and April as well in spring, or sorry, in the month of April, you're not immune to having snow in April. So April, you can have around 2 inches of snow, and that's been the average in the last 30 years. So you can have a couple inches on the ground. Then usually it goes away the next day or two because the weather gets warmer. The other thing I do want to go over before I get into July, August, September are the rainfall totals, because of course in spring now you start seeing more rain. So in April you have close to 3 inches of rain on average. In May, close to 2.7 inches of rain on average. And in June in the Lansing area, on average, this has actually been the month according to our Choose Lansing site that we have, which looks at all the data in Lansing. June has been the month that has had the most rain at 3.6 inches of rain. So these are going to, you can have an idea now of like what the rainfall total looks like. It's nothing like it's way crazy or anything like that, but the rain does start to come. Now let's get into July, August, September. So we're getting into the Michigan summers, and Michigan summers can still go into September. That's why I have July, August, September, September being a part of it, because I know it can be a fall month. But July, August, and September. Let me first talk about the average temperature. So the average temperature in July, 73 degrees. That's usually the hottest month, you guys, and our average is 73 degrees. August, 71 degrees. September, a little bit of a drop, but at 64 degrees. So people love coming to Michigan for the cooler nights. They love to be able to come here because it's not so humid. When you get to some of the southern states, and no offense to those of you who live in southern states or even on the East Coast, you can have really humid weather and you can have temperatures in the 80s and 90s. Well, during our summers, on average, okay, the high that we had in 2020 for a temperature was 95. In 2021, we had an average high of 94. 2022, we got close to 100 at 98. 2023, 92. 2024, 92 was the highest. So the thing I'll tell you about the Michigan summers are that there are going to be 2 weeks, more than likely, on average, where you're going to have extremely hot weather and you're going to be extremely grateful to have central AC in your house if you do have it. So that is something that you will experience for 2 weeks, maybe 3, each and every year. But for the most part, you'll have probably 85, probably closer to 85 degree days during the day, and at night it will get closer to the mid to even low 70s. And I have had people give me a call on lake homes I have had for sale from southern states. They call me because they want to have a second lake home in Michigan because they just like the summers that we have. There are people even on July 4th that I've seen that have gone up north, so in the upper peninsula, so here's the lower peninsula, and then go up north. You know, people that wear sweatshirts on 4th of July at nighttime, it's crazy. But it's just cooler weather, not as humid. The other thing that I will tell you is that, of course, we're the Great Lakes state, and this is something I want to address with you as well during the summers, is that lots of Great Lakes. We got Lake Michigan. We have Lake Superior. We have very swimmable lakes. However, I will tell you, I've been at these lakes in the month of August. And I've also been to the ocean on the East Coast many times growing up. So when you get to the summer months, usually the water is extremely warm when I'm over in the East Coast and I'm in the ocean, right? The water is warmed up, it's in good, and so I'm not freezing cold. So I went in Lake Michigan recently in the month of August, and it was cold in those waters. And that, when as time goes on, you would think that the water would just consistently get warmer. Well, a lot of that reason is because these lakes are so large, and because of how cold it can get in Michigan, especially on the, when you get closer to the coastal line, if it's frozen over, it's going to take a while for that stuff to thaw out. So I'm not saying it's bitterly cold, you guys. It's definitely swimmable. You have to get used to it. But if you're anticipating you're going to be swimming in the month of August, where it's so hot outside and the water's just going to feel just so amazing, I just want to kind of quash that expectation, because it's different here than it is in Florida beaches and some of the southern state beaches. It doesn't have that same feel. So I did want to address that, because it does have to do with the weather, right? With what our temperatures are like, and you're coming here to vacation, you kind of want to know what to expect, right? So July, August, September, I did go over the temperatures, but I do want to go over the rainfall. So in July, the average rainfall is about 2.7 inches. In August, the average is 3.5 inches of rain. And in September, it's about 3.5 inches of rain. So you do start, I will say, like for my lawn in July, sometimes there can be a drought where there is no rain at all. That is something that can happen. So it doesn't surprise me that July is the lowest month and it's at 2.68 inches. So it's just something for you to be aware of as well. Okay, so now we get into October, November. Notice I didn't get into December because I kind of want to save that one for last. So October, November is going to be the bulk of the fall season. And let me tell you, when October comes, it can be 50-50 on if it starts to be fall, like in middle of October, it can be extremely cold, or it can be extremely warm. This year we had a very mild October where it was 70s and 80s throughout the entire month of October. It didn't, until we got into November, that's where it really started getting chilly. But in October, what you will typically find is that that's the prime time for the leaves to change color and for people to take the drive to take the Michigan color tour. And you just see the leaves change. The peak of it typically in our area is close to the second week in October. If you start going up north, the peak might be a little bit sooner than that. Usually they're a week or two ahead of us. So the Michigan color tour is beautiful. You have beautiful fall colors there. The average temperature in October in the last 5 years is about 52 degrees. And then in November, about 42 degrees. So again, I told you, right? October can be hit or miss. It can be beautiful spring-like weather, nice weather, and you don't even feel fall. Because you can see in November is where you're typically going to have the fall weather. It's just gonna get colder during that month. So, and the stats don't lie. So 42 degrees on average in the month of November. As far as snow goes during those months, I kind of want to point that out because there can be snow in October, November. And sometimes, like I've had it on Halloween night on October 31st where it has been cold where you have freezing rain, okay? It can get cold, you know, because in Michigan. But in October, on average, you have about 0.3 inches of snow. So the likelihood you're gonna have snow in October, it's not gonna be so great. Then the month of November, the probability goes up to around, on average, 7 inches of snow. And around Thanksgiving time, this year, we had maybe about an inch or two. So again, fall is, we have amazing fall weather. This is an area where you can see all 4 seasons. I just kind of spelled it out so you can see different temperature changes. It's great to be able to have those as well. And that's part of the reason why I love Michigan. So month of December, this is how I'm gonna end, because I think I told you, right? That I'm gonna tell you what is the probability of Lansing, Michigan having a white Christmas. So the month of December, of course it's part of winter. On average, we have about 21 inches of snow within the last 30 years. So you can have a bunch of snow, you can have a storm start early or even later in the month. And the average temperature in December then goes down to about 34 degrees on average. So in the last 40 years, the probability of having a white Christmas is literally the flip of a coin. So you guys were sitting there in suspense, like what's he gonna say? It's literally like a flip of the coin. It's 50-50. You could have 2 or 3 years in a row where you don't have it. You could have 2 or 3 years in a row where you don't have a white Christmas. Again, I feel the last 2 or 3 winters, there hasn't been a white Christmas. Now again, I'm getting older, so I don't know if maybe we had one. We might have had one within the last 3 years, but our winters have been getting milder. And again, I don't know if that's a trend for something that is new, something to be aware of, or if it's just a fluke and we're gonna get bombarded this year. I have no idea, because the weather's unpredictable, you just never know. But the one thing I do know, and this is what I want to kind of end with, because you know, December I kind of give you the stats and 50-50 on a white Christmas. The thing that I find just with dealing with people is that people are never content with the weather. I just have found that over the years. No matter where you live, you could go down south in Florida, absolutely love it for the winter months because you hate the winter months, but then you can get scorching hot. And I've been to Texas when it's been over 100 degrees, and I've been there during the springtime even, like April, May, or even June, July. Especially June, July is where it can get extremely hot. And everybody's inside in the air conditioning. And in Michigan, the one thing I said to my wife when we were in Texas one time is I said, this is so weird because in Michigan, everybody would be outside because everyone just loves the warmer weather out here. And so it made me more grateful for our Michigan summers because out in Texas, like yes, it can be warmer, but, or even in Florida, it can be warmer, but then it can get so unbearably hot for 2 or 3 months. So I just found that people have a dream to be in a place where the weather is just going to be the same and anywhere you go. And that's just an unrealistic expectation. So if you are relocating to Michigan, I don't want the weather to hold you back. In fact, I see the weather as a pro because I like being able to experience the 4 seasons, but I don't want you to have the cold be a deal breaker for you to come here to the state because it's definitely very doable. You just have to maybe drive a little slower during the winter time. You just have to learn how to shovel, get a little bit more exercise in there. So that's the end of my soapbox there, but I did want to state that I find that really, even in the states where beaches are, like, people still complain about the weather. It's never perfect. So I thank you for tuning in again, and if you are looking to relocate to the area, I would love to talk with you. So again, call, text, email, schedule a Zoom with me at the information in the description below. Also, if you could like, subscribe, or ring the bell for notifications so that you can be the first to be notified when a new episode of Lansing, Michigan Life is dropped, which is around once or twice a week. So I would love to be able to have you subscribe and to be able to interact with you sometime. So until next time, make it a great day.